Hi, this is Jürgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. Today, I want to talk about how feminism contributes to women being miserable and to them not being able to form good, quality, healthy relationships with a man. I'm talking specifically about women who identify as feminists. I've noticed this time and time again after having seen clients professionally for 25 years that female clients who strongly identify as feminists, A, they're usually miserable, and B, they hardly ever have a good, fulfilling, long-term relationship with a man. I'm pretty sure that this has a lot to do with feminism itself as an ideology and with their identities as a feminist. Why would that be? I hear some of you cry. Well, consider this. To be able to have a good relationship with someone, an intimate, close relationship with someone, you have to be able to identify with them somehow, to see that we fundamentally share our humanity. You also have to be able to appreciate and see their individuality. Feminism as an ideology does not train women to see men as human beings, like them in many ways, but also different from them in many ways, and that men are unique and have their own individuality. Instead, they're trained to see men as oppressors and members of the patriarchy. And women are trained to see themselves simultaneously as victims, victims due to being females, and to simultaneously to see themselves as morally better than men just by the fact that they are females. This is a horrible basis to be able to have a happy, fulfilling relationship. If you speak to these women who strongly identify as feminists, you'll notice that feminism is not really about equality. Despite everything that you're reading and that you're hearing, it's not really about equality. Hardcore feminists don't give a shit about men and men's suffering and what men are going through as individuals. What they're looking for are privileges for women, quotas for women, right? They don't want freedom of speech. If you speak to a radical feminist, she doesn't want freedom of speech. She doesn't want rule of law, universal rights, irrespective of gender. They're more likely to claim that women deserve to be believed, that women should have certain privileged and preferential treatment to even out the score. The problem with this is that you can't really see another person's shared humanity, and you can't see their individuality when you do this. So there's no basis for intimacy. It's a bit like the whole anti-racism project, which I think is a complete hoax. What you want to do is you want to encourage universal human rights. You want to encourage freedom of speech and rule of law and these sorts of things, right? Racism, of course, is low-level collectivism. But this whole idea, for example, that because, like me, you're white, you have white skin, that there's some sort of original sin, that because you have that skin color, irrespective of how I or you as white guys live our lives, we are just saturated with racist tendencies. due to that as some sort of collective original sin. This is the most racist idea imaginable. You don't combat racism by doing that. And this idea that if someone has a black skin color, they can't be racist because that only belongs to people of white skin color. This is a way of dehumanizing someone. So when women are not taught to view themselves as individuals and to see other people's as individuals who basically shares their humanity, they instead are taught to identify primarily with their gender and with females as a group. And they're being sold the idea that they're actually better than men. If you speak to radical feminists, they have this idea that females are actually better than men. They have better morals, better ethics. They're pure. If women could just take over in quotation marks and run everything, everything would be better. As if women in the Western world really are oppressed and live in a patriarchy. We're all pretty much in the Western world these days raised to believe this. Now, the problem is when you are raised as a woman to kind of think that you're better just because you are a woman, and you're trained to not see a man as someone who shares your humanity and also has their own individuality, but you see them as a member of an oppressive group that victimizes you. And just like with the anti-racists, that they have this collective stink of patriarchy that they're somehow responsible for, that's going to make you way less compassionate, right? So when a woman sees herself as better than men due to being a woman, this encourages a sense of entitlement. It encourages hypocrisy. And the flip side of this, of course, is that by viewing men as their oppressors and them as being oppressed due to the fact that they are women, irrespectively of what's going on in their own individual life, this bitter, resentful victimhood identity contributes to them being more stupid than they need to be. Why, you may ask? Well, as long as you have a victim identity, there is no incentive to look at yourself. There's no incentive to look at what you are doing and how you're making meaning and how you are contributing to things in a relationships, because you are the pure one and you are the innocent one and you're simultaneously the victim. So by pointing fingers outwards and being the victim, there's no inclination to learn anything, because they don't really self-reflect, because they don't take responsibility. People who have a victimhood identity don't take responsibility for their own emotional life. Instead, they outsource it as being the effect of the society that they live in and how other people are or may be treating them. The victimhood mindset not only then makes people more stupid, it makes people more neurotic. Because if other people, if men and the patriarchy are the source of your misery, then that very easily encourages rage. When a man doesn't act in accordance with the entitlement views. And it easily engenders hopelessness. So it makes these women more neurotic than they otherwise need to be. It makes the relationship less equal because only the man is responsible. And he's not only responsible for what he does, he's collectively responsible as part of the patriarchy. And the feminist has no responsibility. So it's a completely unequal relationship, right? And it makes the woman way less compassionate than she otherwise would have been. Because if you want to see people who really truly have no compassion, look at people who have a strong victim identity. People who have a strong victim identity are not compassionate. They're completely egocentric. And they have very little compassion to give, especially towards those they view as their oppressors. So combine this tendency to think that they're better on the one hand, that their shit doesn't stink, essentially, and the victimhood identity on the other hand, and you have a combination that's just toxic. Listen, having a great relationship can be difficult enough for two people who love each other. Life is difficult. It's a full contact sport. But stupid ideologies such as feminism certainly don't help. And if you're still crying, no, it's all about equality. It's not. It never has been. Again, I make the point, look at feminists' relationship to things like rule of law and freedom of speech and these sorts of things. They're not in favor of it. There's also something else. It makes females, well, more stupid, less wise, more shallow. Because if you take a 30-year-old woman in the Western world who's taught to believe that she's oppressed and that she lives in a patriarchy, it's not even true. It's not even true. Jordan Peterson is one example of a guy who's done presentations on this topic and speaks very well about it. But go to any big city in a European country and notice people who live on the streets and just begin to notice how many males you find who are homeless before you find any female who's homeless. Might that indicate something for you? You know, who gets killed in war? Who gets sent to war? You know, look at murder rates pretty much everywhere. Men kill men for the most part, right? Look at who's incarcerated. Look at who drops out of education. Look at who has way more suicide. So this idea that in the Western world that we live in a patriarchy is just not the case. And if you look at income, it's not the case if a man and a woman, for example, go to an engineering firm and they get the same position, that females are paid less than men. The reason why men often earn more is that they're more often in the STEM fields. They're more likely to do more risky work. They're more likely to be entrepreneurial. And of the very few people who are willing to work 60, 70, 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, most people of both genders are not crazy enough to do that, and that's a good thing. But the very few kind of high achiever types who tend to be are mostly men. And females, many of them, when they hit their 30s, have other priorities. They don't necessarily want to live that sort of life. So it's not that they're oppressed. And if you look at feminists too, I mean, notice how remarkably quiet they are when it comes to actual, real oppression against women in the world. Look at the Muslim majority countries. How women are treated. They're treated horribly. They have no freedom of speech. They have very limited rights. Where are the feminists when it comes to protesting and standing up for those? Even the many the many Muslim women who are oppressed in Western societies by their husbands, forced marriages, genital mutilation, social control, these sorts of things. Feminists are remarkably silent when it comes to these sorts of issues. In fact, they're way more likely to support Islam as an ideology and to brand those who criticize these ideas and practices as being racists and white supremacists and all this sort of stuff. It's a bit like, I, as the Western woman, should live this privileged life, but she can be that oppressed Pakistani or Somali, women, because that's multiculturalism, and I just love the diversity, and who am I to judge? It's so shallow. It's so trite. It's so shallow, the whole thing. So if you're a man and you're dating and you're dating someone who's a hardcore identified feminist, might be a red flag. If you're a woman and you identify as a feminist, it's probably a red flag. Take a look at. I hope this video perhaps can inspire you to take a closer look at the ideology itself and its consequences. Maybe you could listen to the anti-feminist, the former feminist Janice Fiamengo, and the Fiamengo files. There's a lot of useful information there. Again, my critique is not based upon having read a lot of feminist literature. It's based upon seeing clients and noticing over time that females who strongly identify as feminists are usually miserable, and they almost never have good quality, fulfilling relationships with a male. So I think it's unwoke, it's politically incorrect, but it's high time to call BS on the entire project. So anyways, if you like my way of thinking, know that I see clients from all over the world on Skype. So if you would like to work with me to make changes, you can reach me at provocativehypnosis.com. The next seminar to train with me online to learn the psychological illusion model is March the 25th and 26th. Again, go to provocativehypnosis.com and the seminar page if you are interested. I would love to hear your thoughts. I hope this was thought-provoking. Until next time, thanks for listening.